Introduction of Star Wars into the world in 1977, when Star Wars: A New Hope came out, is something that changed so many people's lives, including mine. This caused so many people around the globe to fall in love with the fandom. I think this can be attributed to the vast amount of characters, planets, and many of the great storylines that incorporate both those two things. The thing that makes it so great are the many different niches that are in Star Wars. I mean, from the comic books to the books to the TV shows to the video games, to everything. It's so many different things that someone can love about Star Wars. There's something for everybody. And today I want to talk about one of these niches. So it's from A New Hope, and it's actually a 5-second clip. So here we go. We're going to roll that clip right now.
That's what your uncle told you. He didn't hold with your father's ideals, thought he should have stayed here and not gotten involved.
You fought in the Clone Wars?
Yes. I was once a Jedi Knight, the same as your father.
And yep, that one line, that was muttered by Sir Alec Guinness. I am editing this video and realized that I completely botched that. Mark Hamill says that, not Alec Guinness. What a Star Wars fan I am. I am so sorry. I mean, those words right there created so much. They created two different, actually, no, hold on. Probably 4 or 5 different TV shows. They expanded on so many different characters and introduced us to a whole nother plethora of characters that someone couldn't even imagine. I mean, with this universe as expansive as Star Wars already is, being introduced to hundreds of new characters that's just a straight derivative of movies is actually incredible. Now, the OG trilogy is literally perfect. It's the movies that I grew up on. I actually watched them before the prequel trilogy. Return of the Jedi was the first Star Wars movie that I ever watched, followed by Revenge of the Sith. Don't know why I had that in that order. It just happened. It's an incredible story. You know, seeing Luke's journey from a young and annoying kid on Tatooine. He's honestly a brat. It's hard to like him. And then his journey to become a wise and powerful Jedi Master. It's beautiful. It really is. It's the perfect trilogy of movies for Star Wars. But sometimes it doesn't feel like Star Wars, you know? I think of Star Wars and I think of gigantic wars involving many different planets, so many different fast-paced action scenes, diverse militaries, just a giant war. And, you know, the original trilogy does have the Rebel Alliance versus the Empire, but it feels small and insignificant compared to what we get in the prequels. And that's exactly what the Clone Wars gave us. From the very first scene in the Clone Wars movie, we were able to see exactly what Star Wars is. The first scene of the Clone Wars gives us so much. So we're thrown into Christophsis, new planet. We have no idea what this planet is about. We have no idea why our heroes and our enemies are fighting here. We see that it's like a crystal planet, which is pretty cool. We've never really seen that before. We see Anakin and Obi-Wan, familiar characters who we've been with the entire saga. We see clones who are old, but they're given more depth. We're introduced to Rex, and then we also know Cody from Revenge of the Sith. But again, Cody's not really someone we really see in Revenge of the Sith. He's, here's your lightsaber, Obi-Wan, and then that's it. Fire! And then shoot on Obi-Wan. You know, it's not really a character that we know. And then the brutality of the war between the Republic and the Separatists. I mean, we see a clone go up to a droid, punch him, break his hand, and get shot. It's just real. It's real war, and that's something I appreciate. So something that is worth mentioning is the 2003 Clone Wars animated show. It's a 2-hour-long miniseries. It's based off of the animation style of Samurai Jack, if anyone's seen that. Really good. We see Anakin's journey documented from being a Padawan to a Jedi Knight, which is really cool, and then also has a bit of side stories here and there. Some characters that really shine are Mace Windu, General Grievous, Shaak Ti, Padme. They all really get fleshed out. And then also, can't forget about the ARC Troopers. Sorry, I almost blanked on that. These characters all get fleshed out, but it's not a show that really was meant to stand on its own. It's a precursor to Revenge of the Sith, and it did its job, but it's not a show that was really meant to flesh out these characters wholeheartedly and truly. They do get their deserved screen time, and they do get their deserved representation. It's not a show that's can stand by itself. I do recommend watching it, though. So 2008 comes along, and Dave Filoni is put in charge of Star Wars: The Clone Wars and rolls out the Star Wars: The Clone Wars movie. It's great. And after somewhat successful theatrical debut, they got cleared for season 1 of the show. And, you know, season 1 wasn't horrible, but it wasn't amazing either. It definitely had its slow parts. Some arcs I want to recommend, I'll put up on the screen right now. The goal of the season 1 was to really set a precedent of what the show would try to accomplish within the entire series. And I think those 3 things that it really tried to aim to do were flesh out the characters from the prequel trilogy more, so give them more depth, really expand on why they did these things, and make them more human. I think the prequel trilogy lacked a lot of great writing, and it suffered. The characters suffered. I think the next biggest thing was to justify Anakin's turn to the dark side. Prequels did not do a good job of that. Everyone knows that. We don't really see Anakin as a hero. We see him whine, supposed to be a hero. Everyone talks about how great of a hero he is. We don't see him be that hero. Clone Wars really nails that. And the third and final thing that the Clone Wars show does makes the clone troopers into real human beings who go through real moral struggles. That is what makes this show, and that's what I'm going to talk about in this whole entire video, mostly. I'll talk about the previous 2 as well. But that third point right there is what really makes this entire show. Hell, it's called the Clone Wars for a reason. When they were fleshing out the characters for this prequel trilogy, they wanted to give them real stories in the Clone Wars. A lot of the characters that thrive from this are people like Padme. She's someone who heavily benefits. She has many great story arcs that are really fun to follow. In one of the very first story arcs, the Malevolence, she is shown as like we reintroduced to her and Jar Jar. It's very fun to watch. She has many great arcs where she's very diplomatic, where she travels to Mandalore, and with Rush Clovis as well, who's an old friend of hers who's turned lover. It's really great to follow her whole story. It also builds off of her survival skills, which we already have seen in the prequel trilogy with Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. She's very independent. She can take care of herself very easily. Another one is Jar Jar. He's still weird and quirky, Jar Jar. You know, people have thoughts and opinions about Jar Jar, myself included, but he does have some good moments in the episodes. In the first season, he's become like a Bombad Jedi. It can be pretty fun at times, and you know, it benefits him and his character as a whole. There's an episode in season 5 or 6, I think, where him and Mace Windu go on some excursion to find a space switch and some prophecy. It's really cool. It's not something you'd ever think that Mace Windu and Jar Jar would be on a quest together, which is pretty dope. And then, of course, Darth frickin' Maul. You could argue that Darth Maul is a top 3 character in the entire show. You really could. You know, we're reintroduced to him, which is post-fight with Obi-Wan. He's down in the dumps. He's in the slums. And he's got his entire half of his body cut in half. He's got these spider legs. It's crazy. And then we end up seeing, get him his legs back. He recruits pirates to join him. Hondo Anaka, which is another side character in Star Wars. Recruits pirates to join him. He fights with Obi-Wan again for the second time. Him and Savage Opress, which is another character that we were introduced to in the Clone Wars. And then after that, he goes and takes Mandalore with the help of the Death Watch, betrays the Death Watch. He's able to kill Pre Vizsla, who's the leader of the Death Watch. Kills Pre Vizsla, obtains the Darksaber, which is like the coolest weapon in all of Star Wars, by far, if you ask me. And that's also another thing the Clone Wars gave us, the freaking Darksaber. Gets the Darksaber, ends up killing Obi-Wan's girlfriend right in front of him. Horrible. It's brutal. And then fights off Palpatine a couple episodes later, and then is able to predict Order 66. Like, Darth Maul is a beast in this show. And Anakin is really shown as the person we hear about in the original trilogy and who he tries to be in the prequels. In the original trilogy, we hear Obi-Wan talk about Anakin as he was the best starfighter in the galaxy. He was a cunning warrior, and he was a good friend. And we're able to see all of those taken into account in the Clone Wars. There are so many times that Anakin is showing off his piloting skills where he saves the day, where he's able to get out of sticky situations, whether he's in his own starfighter or in any starship, really. He's so good that he can pilot any really starship. Cunning warrior, he fights with Dooku, Ventress, and so many other great battles. He never fights General Grievous because in Revenge of the Sith, when Grievous and Anakin meet, that's their first time meeting each other, so they couldn't have Anakin and General Grievous meet each other in the show. And he was a good friend because the dynamic between him and Obi-Wan is phenomenal. That you really see how they have a great friendship where they do things and they don't really agree with them sometimes, but they are good friends enough where they know each other and where they know they can't change them, so they'll support them in their decisions. It's really good. And we also see Anakin show empathy for these people that he doesn't really know and that he doesn't really had strong relationships with, but he's a great guy and he's always trying to be righteous, so he really shows how he's a true Jedi when he meets new people. And honestly, he's probably the main protagonist of the entire show. And the last thing I want to talk about is the clones. The clones are by far my favorite part of the entire show. So in Revenge of the Sith, the clones are made out to be these mindless people who just obey orders. We don't really see who they are. They're just plot devices, really, which is kind of annoying. But the show, they make them into real people who deal with real dilemmas, and they each have individual flaws. They have the same face and the same voice, but each clone is distinguishable so much, to the point where my friends and I, we even made a ranking tier list of not the entire cast of clones throughout the show, but a lot of them, a lot of the main ones, and a lot of the second and third tier characters. We made an entire tier list. The fact they're able to do that with characters who have the same voice and the same face is incredible to me. And yeah, so there's a lot of examples of where they show their humanity. For example, like my personal favorite arc throughout the entire show, and I think a lot of people's favorite, is the Umbara arc. I won't even spoil it, but they just have to deal with a lot of choosing between two sides, a lot of gray area, a lot of friendly fire, a lot of turning against your own men, and a lot of mutiny. And it's just a 4-episode arc that is the epitome of what the clones dealt with the entire war. Another good one is Ryloth, with Waxer and Boyle of the 212th, where they find like a lost refugee, Numa, and she is essentially scared. She's lost her parents, she doesn't really know where to go, and Waxer and Boyle really learn how to step aside from the war and their mission, really care about these individual people and see that the struggles that they've gone through and how the war that they're fighting in has led these people out of their homes. It's really cool. And last is the Camino Squad, or not Camino Squad, the Domino Squad in Camino. This is probably, they're like everyone's fan favorite clones. I mean, we've been with them throughout the entire show from season 1 to season 6, I guess. They're just awesome, and they essentially learn how to work as a team and persevere through their struggles. Never abandon their teammates or their comrades, and remember those who have helped you throughout the way. All of these goals were met tenfold. They were able to accomplish everything that set out to do, and a lot more, by giving us characters and stories that we didn't know that we wanted. But I could not talk about the Clone Wars if I didn't mention Ahsoka Tano. Ahsoka is easily one of the best additions to the show, and arguably to the Star Wars franchise as a whole. So we're introduced to her as Anakin's new Padawan in the beginning of the movie, and he's like, what the heck? Like, I don't even have a Padawan. What was this? He doesn't even want her. And that's kind of like where we parallel Anakin as the audience. Or like, who's this person? Like, she's not in the prequels or the original trilogy. Like, where's she coming from? And, she doesn't really help her case. She starts off as a snarky brat, very arrogant, thinks she knows everything. And she's given these normal flaws. But the thing is, they balance out with great traits. She's empathetic. She's very independent. She has a lot of ingenuity. She thinks on her feet all the time. And that's something that's really awesome. And the fact that we're able to get a point of view of a Padawan growing up in the Clone Wars is pretty awesome, honestly. Seeing her learn how to be independent and use her master's teachings whenever that's needed, when her master's not there. It's pretty cool. She inhabits his good traits and his bad traits, which is pretty funny because it's real. She's not just going to inhabit just his good traits. She instigates a lot of things. But the thing is, we grow up and we see her mature throughout the entire show. By seasons 3 and 4, she's definitely way different than she was when she was in season 1 in the movie. And by the end of the show, she's a full-fledged adult who has become wise and powerful, but does not flaunt it. She only shows it when she needs to. And her whole journey reminds me a lot of Luke Skywalker. So if you're thinking about watching this show, I definitely recommend watching it, at least for Ahsoka. Thanks for listening to me ramble on. I hope to get some more Star Wars and A Song of Ice and Fire content out for everyone. I enjoy talking about all this, so thank you. Have a great rest of your day.